Hey folks, Mike Lundy here with Fish Alaska Magazine, and this is part 2 series how to tie the Jawbreaker. In part 1, we showed you the materials that are used for tying the Jawbreaker, and now we're going to take all these individual materials and tie them and try to do it step by step. So first things first, hook of choice, which we went over before. Any kind of jig style shank with a 60 or 90 degree bend is what you want. So I prefer the Gamakatsu Jig 90 RB, which has a 90 degree angle, at 90 degree shank at the end. I'm sorry, the beginning of the jig hook right there, which shows the best vertical movement during the presentation. So first things first, for your weight, which is basically the jig head substitute, a large or medium sized cone head. So first I slide that on as I just did right here, and then I take a twister tail and I cut the segmented section off. This is going to get threaded onto the jig hook, and the body right here, you're not going to use it. It can be discarded after you cut it. So we have our cone head, got our cone head here. Now we're going to slide the twister tail up the hook. And when you slide it up, it should be right in parallel, even with the hook barb, just like that, as you can see, right about even with the hook barb there. Now we're going to insert in the vise and get our base coat started so we can start tying the materials in. Alright. Now, like I mentioned, different thread types work just fine. This is Danville's Flamaster 6-aught 210 denier, works just fine. This is a little more sensitive thread, so be careful. This tends to break, but this is what the original recipe calls for. But again, you can also use 6-aught uni or also mono, works just fine. Just with the Danville, be a little extra cautious how much pressure you apply on the wraps. So now we have our tail in here, but there's actually two tails. In addition to the twister tail is a sparse marabou tail. So here we got a white marabou plume. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just tie in a sparse tail. So I'm going to take my fingers and stroke the fibers back to have a really small portion selected. Right about there is pretty good. But the length, right about the length of the twister tail. So I'm going to tie that in. About 5 or 6 good wraps to get it secured in there. And again, don't apply too much pressure. The Danville thread may break. Alright, now that's in there. Now trim the axis marabou away. And I'm just going to wrap that down. Alright, now next is going to be a series of 3 materials I'm going to tie in. I got both medium and large diameter cactus chenille. Work just fine. We'll go with the medium here. So I'm going to cut about roughly a 6-inch strand right here. We'll tie that in. So this will be the first material to tie in right here. Alright, that is in. Now next is the copper wire right here. Just gold wire works fine. Silver, feel free to experiment. I'm going to tie that in next. Alright, now that's in there. Alright, the next, I mentioned before, there's 2 different feathers. I like a little smaller, sparser, dry fly hackle feather for the main body. So this will be the 3rd material right here. So I just kind of take, just like any standard hackle, I like to maximize the efficiency with the feather. I like to pull the fibers out to the maximum length possible. Get the little scissors fold right there. I'm going to tie it in right there. Alright, I'm going to trim away the excess feather. Remove some of this fluff up here. I'm going to shorten this a little bit so I have a little bit more to palmer. Okay. You can use hackle pliers for palmering, just personal preference. Alright, now I have all my 3 main body materials in. Now, I'm going to advance my thread to the cone head. Just slightly behind the cone head. Now, the first material I'm going to advance forward is going to be the chenille. So I'm going to palmer this forward. And make sure the cone head stays in place. I'm going to take the excess chenille here and build up a little thicker body near the head region of the fly here, so I have a nice even body. Now the cone head should slide around as much. Alright, now I'm going to tie off the first material there. Alright, I'll tie that off. Now, second, I'm going to bring forward, palmer forward the saddle hackle feather. So let's get this in my hackle pliers here. Palmer this forward. Okay. Would you like to? Let's palmer this forward here. Now I don't palmer all the way forward. I kind of leave a little bit of a gap so I can tie in for the soy legs and have enough placement for the larger saddle hackle feather in the very last step. So right about there I have a little bit of gap which I want. So once I get to there, I can probably go one more. Okay, there we go. Now I'm going to tie off the saddle hackle feather here, the dry fly hackle feather here. Alright, now the final material to bring forward is the copper wire. Now for that, what I'm going to do is a technique called counter wrapping, which is basically kind of like wrapping in reverse. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the wire, I'm actually going to counter wrap it the other direction. So I'm going to spiral wrap it forward like that. I'm going to advance it all the way forward about the same location where the hackle got tied off. So usually about 6-7 turns of the wire should suffice. I'm going to tie off the wire. Alright, so trim off the excess wire. Now there's your main body materials. So we're almost done. 2 final materials to tie in. We're going to be the soy legs and the other saddle hackle feather. So right here I've already got them pre-cut. You only use, the recipe calls originally for 3 individual legs and it's all you want. If you use more than 3, it's going to inhibit the movement of the fly and not move as efficiently in the water and kind of kill off the action. So I just cut an individual set of 3 and make sure that they're all each individual leg is unattached from one another. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to center tie in the right here on the side. I'll center tie these in. And I'll just make 2 loose wraps, use my fingers and manipulate it around so I get it in the right desired position, right in the side. Then once I have it in the side to where I want it, then I'll lay it down with a series of heavier, a little more pressured wraps. So about 4 or 5 more good wraps to get it in place. Now I'm going to take the remaining ends that are hanging up front. I'm going to fold them over like this. Make 2-3 wraps. Now I just got to tie it on the other side. Now I'm going to rotate my vise over and fold these over. So that way they're tied on the other side. Alright, and there you go. The legs are in. Now I'll just pre-trim them real quick so they're about the same length of the fly. So I'll just hold them out, make sure they're about the length of the fly here. Same thing with the other side. Make sure they're length of the fly. Okay, the legs are in, and if they don't look like they're in the side, which you can always do, you can always hold materials back a little bit and wrap backwards just a little more. Make sure they're not going anywhere. Okay, now we have this little bit of space left. And this is where the larger saddle hackle feather comes into play. And this is the last thing we're going to tie in right here. So, get rid of the excess. Alright. Tie that in. Alright. Trim off the excess right here. Alright, now we're going to palmer this feather around to cover up that little gap space right there for my hackle pliers. Just keep palmering around. Usually about 5 or 6 times should be plenty, but ideally you want the bulk and the front to be about the same thickness and diameter as the back tail. That's just my theory. And the feather accidentally broke. And let's fix that real quick here. There we go. Alright, feather accidentally fell out of the hackle pliers. Redo that step real quick. Okay. One more should do it. Alright, I'll trim off. Now we'll tie this off. Trim away the excess hackle feather. Okay. I'll fold these fibers back so it looks a little more laid down better. Okay. Now we'll whip finish it off and she'll be done. As you do, I prefer 2 whip finishes over 1. That way it just adds a little extra security the wraps, make sure they don't undo themselves. One whip finish. And I'll do a second one. And there you go. That is the Jawbreaker fly for Arctic grayling. Now, as I mentioned in the article, there's no exact theories on what this thing represents, but probably represents a salmon smolt. And actually, recently in Chino, we just caught some sheepfish on this thing as bycatch fishing for them. So I think the grayling perceive this as a smolt pattern, or as a smolt, and that's why they strike this thing a lot. But basically, you know, from the spinning spinfish world perspective, you know, the 2-inch white crappie 2 jig is probably one of the best grayling lures of all time, and that's basically what this thing represents. It represents the crappie jig, but it's got a little extra movement with the silly legs and the marabou and sparse hackle feather in there. So there you go. That is the Jawbreaker right there. Just, I would recommend like an 8-10 pound butt section, 4-pound tippet, and this thing does very well in the swing. You can also raise your rod tip up and do a little vertical presentation. Typically the fly does this through the water, but that's basically how you tie a Jawbreaker. And this is Mike Lundy with Fish Alaska Magazine, and feel free to pay attention to next series of king salmon videos we'll be doing based off the April 2016 issue with my article called Top 10 Flies for Kinks. So thanks for hearing me today, and thanks for hearing on. Mike Lundy signing off, Fish Alaska. Thank you.